Good morning. Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. My name is Jay Tiefenbrunn. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am very pleased to be your director of music ministries. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our online worship. Our collaborative pianist this morning is Hollingsmith-Bourne. If you're watching live, buttons will appear that will bring you to our website. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, visit firstuunash.org and click on the With You Worship Portal button for all the information you need to participate in today's worship, including the order of service, joys and concerns form, and our offering. Our speaker this morning is Reverend Holly Mueller. Holly has been attending First UU since 2012, and she was ordained by this church in 2018 and is currently working as a hospice chaplain. Our opening song is Tula Klizeo, written by Joseph Shabalala, which comes from the South African Mbube tradition, which is never sung standing still. Joseph came to New York to work with Paul Simon in the 1980s during the height of the apartheid regime. Because traditional dance was banned at that time, a modified Zulu stomp emerged. The right foot slightly ahead of the left, the hands at waist level, palms down to honor the earth. And you step forward and back. At the start of the second phrase of the song, E Kaya, the hands reach up high and then return to place. I invite you to join the feet of some of our friends as we sing together, Tula Klizeo, Nala Pasakaya, be still my heart, even here. I am home.
Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya. Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya. Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Tula Klizeo nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya, Hey Kaya nala pasekaya.
It is my pleasure, to welcome you this morning, and I invite you to connect in with your hearts and reach out, connecting with all of our neighbors worshiping with us this morning online. Won't you say hello in the chat to let us know that you're here? We love to see who's online with us this morning. Good morning.
Our chalice lighting for this morning was written by Maureen Killoran. As the kindling of this chalice causes the community, let there be light. As the flame of this chalice reminds us of our values, let there be light. As the glow of this chalice encourages us to hope, let there be light.
Good morning. I hope you all can hear me at the moment. I'm having some camera difficulties, which I will hopefully resolve before we get further into the service. But we'll begin today with the words of Kathleen McTeague. You who are brokenhearted, who woke up today with the winds of despair whistling through your mind, come in. You who are brave but wounded, limping through life and hurting with every step, come in. You who are fearful, who live with shadows hovering over your shoulders, come in. This place is a sanctuary, and it is for you. You who are filled with happiness, whose abundance overflows, come in. You who walk through the world with lightness and grace, who awoke this morning with strength and hope. You who have everything to give, come in. This place is your calling, a riverbank to channel the sweet waters of your life, the place where you are called by the world's need. Here we offer in love. Here we receive in gratitude. Here we make a circle from the great gifts of breath, attention, and purpose. Come in.
Good morning. Today's story is one that I've known for years, and some of you may already know that I'm a major fan of elephants, to the extent that I actually have a tattoo of a mother and baby elephant, which is quite relevant today with our story. Shirley came to the elephant sanctuary in Hohenwald, Tennessee. At that point, she had not seen another elephant for 20 years, and no one knew how she'd react. She was placed in a single stall so she would have time to adjust. And the other elephants started trumpeting to her, and she trumpeted back. And they put their trunks through the bars of the stalls, and Shirley and the other elephants, they all touched each other. They wrapped their trunks around each other. They held each other's trunks through the bars. So everyone was satisfied that Shirley would adjust nicely, and they left for the night. The last of the elephants were coming in now, and Jenny was usually the very last. She had been kept in a trailer for over a year. And so she loved to be outside and roam around, and she did that for as late in the day as she could. Now, she came in, and all through the night the people could hear trumpeting coming from the elephants. And when they arrived at the barn in the morning, they were amazed to see that Shirley and Jenny had tried to get to each other so hard that they had bent those big bars in the stalls. In 1948, Shirley was born in Sumatra, Indonesia. She was captured when she was 5. Now think about it. Elephants stay with their mothers very close until they're 3 or 4, and they're not actually grown until maybe 14. So at 5, Shirley was barely a toddler. They took her from her family, from her aunts, from her grandmother, from her siblings, from her cousins, and they sold her to a circus. Elephants are very smart. They can learn a lot of tricks very quickly, and they're big and they're strong, and people loved to see them in the circus. And Shirley became a very good circus performer. It's not a natural life for them, but it was her life. And then there was Jenny, who was also captured in Indonesia, but she was only 4 at the time. And when she came to the circus, Shirley was 20. So Shirley took Jenny under her trunk, so to speak, and she became a mother to her. And they worked together in the circus for the next 10 years. One day, a new elephant arrived, and that elephant was frightened and confused and charged. And as always, Shirley was going to protect Jenny. She stood between Jenny and that elephant, and her rear right leg was badly injured. She couldn't do her circus performance anymore, and so they sold her to a zoo. It was a very small zoo, and she was there for 20 years with not a single elephant around her, entirely alone. Not only did she not have her mother and her grandmother, her aunts and her siblings and her cousins, she didn't have anyone except one man named Saul who worked there and who fell in love with Shirley. He tried to spend as much time with her as he could. He found out what all her favorite snacks were. Mostly that was carrots and apples. And he found that her favorite thing of all was to be bathed. And he would take the hose and he would spray Shirley all over, and Shirley would just stand there in a momentary state of bliss. Now, Shirley got to be 50 years old. And finally, the zoo decided that she should have a place to retire and rest. And so they decided on the elephant sanctuary in Hohenwald. We go back now to that morning at the sanctuary, and when they saw how Shirley and Jenny had bent those bars trying to get to each other, they opened up the stall as quickly as they could. Shirley caressed Jenny with her trunk, and Jenny leaned into Shirley. They held trunks the way we might hold hands, and they played in the water together, spraying each other. When Jenny would lie down for a nap, Shirley, even with her injured leg holding it up off the ground, Shirley would stand over Jenny to shield her from the sun, to protect her. Now, the people there did some research, and they learned that shared history that Shirley and Jenny had, and they understood. They were not surprised. They had never seen two elephants behave that way before. It was clear that they knew each other and they loved each other. They had never forgotten each other. And now, Shirley and Jenny would never be separated again. Two elephants who had been parted 20 years before could live the rest of their lives as mother and daughter once again. And so ends our story.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Rogers. I am a member of this congregation, a member of the worship committee, and an aspirant to Unitarian Universalist ministry. It is my pleasure to welcome you to worship. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation, we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We are a welcoming congregation, and we deepen our relationships as we serve our congregation's mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world, guided by reason and compassion. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. All are welcome to attend our services, and people become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and supporting the church with their time and finances. If you are considering joining the church, please contact Denise Couch, your assistant minister for congregational engagement. Her email address can be found in the staff directory under Contact Us on our website. Following the service, we hope everyone will enjoy at least one of the online opportunities for fellowship listed in our online worship portal, and our website holds many other announcements of interest, which I hope you will read. I have been asked to emphasize this. The Social Justice Committee is hosting a visioning meeting on Zoom today from 1 to 2:30 p.m. If you have ever wanted to learn more about social justice efforts at FUN, wanted to share your thoughts, or wanted to get involved but didn't know how to get started, this is the perfect opportunity for you. Email socialjustice@thefun.org, socialjustice@thefun.org to join the meeting. You may know that we share every Sunday's collection with an organization whose work outside our walls aligns with our values. For the month of July, our Share the Plate partner is an organization with whom our congregation has a long history, Safe Haven Family Shelter. You can find more about their work in our online worship portal. For now, while we are meeting entirely online, there are no friendly ushers to pass you the offering bowls, but our fabulous finance and communication folks have made sure that anyone at any time can access our online donation form at firstuunash.org. If you would like to mail a check to the church, please write in the memo line how you would like your donation to be used. If you want your gift to be credited to your pledge, please write pledge. If you write Sunday offering, it will be donated to our Share the Plate partner. Now, today, we have a stewardship reflection from FUN member Jack Nugent.
Hi, my name's Jack Nugent, and I'm here to talk to you about stewardship. Well, actually, I'm here to talk to you about how come I'm so enthusiastic about First UU Nashville. I spent the first 8 years of my life living with my paternal grandparents, going to the Moravian church they attended up in the Carolina, Virginia hills. That church mostly was about the love and fellowship of Christianity. My grandfather used to say that instead of hellfire and brimstone, they were more about heckfire and sandstone. Well, at the age of 9, I went to live with my parents, who were dyed-in-the-wool Southern Baptists. And I got enough hellfire and brimstone in that first year to make up for all the 8 years before. By the time I was 12, I'd got tired of hearing that I was going to go to hell and there was nothing I could do about it. So I figured if I wasn't going to go to heaven, I was going to enjoy myself while I was here on earth, and that was pretty much it for me in organized religion. When we moved to Nashville, the first question that many of our new acquaintances would ask us is, what church do you go to? Well, Bonnie, my wife, thought it might be a good idea for us to have an answer, not a I don't know. So she looked around and she found First UU Nash. I had heard of the UU church and had a vague notion that it was a fellowship of spiritual but not necessarily religious dogmatic people. Anyway, we started coming and we've been a member ever since. I was recently able to articulate why this place and you folks resonate so well with me. When I am here, I am transported back to being with my grandmother and grandfather and the Moravian church. Their emphasis was on love and brotherhood and community spirit. I'm drawn to your commitments to social and economic justice because it's not just some catchwords, but it's actually written into your covenants, your mission, your vision, and your principles. This place has fulfilled a spiritual void in my life that's been empty since I was 8 years old. And I thank you all for that. Now look, I know with all the COVID and the social distancing and the campus being shut down, you might think it's a hard thing to do to be a part of and support First UU Nash, but it's not. They broadcast the services every Sunday. Go to church in your heart and support them with your personal spirit and with your finances. Thanks so much for having me. We are so glad we are here.
Thank you, Jack. In this season of virtual offering bowls, we are especially grateful for the steady generosity which allows us, both within and beyond the congregation, to continue creating community, nurturing spiritual growth, and acting on our values. We are also deeply grateful for your presence with us. And at this time, I invite you to join in our weekly ritual of gathered community. Following the upcoming musical interlude, we will share the joys and concerns submitted through the provided online form, provided that permission is given on that form. All joys and concerns will be shared as usual with our lay ministry team. So now I invite you to take a deep breath. Find yourself more fully present, not only to yourself, but to the truth that as you sit in your particular spot and join in worship today, you are undeniably connected to this gathered community. Even though we cannot be physically present with each other, we are truly connected across both space and even time. Feel yourself held by this community and by our covenant together. I invite you to take a moment to reflect on the past hours, days, and weeks, and what you bring with you to this space. What is truly moving your spirit now? What joys, concerns, and sorrows have you brought with you to this moment? Let us listen. Dan and Kathy Hiller have shared a joy. Ours is a candle of joy for Dan's mother, Phyllis Hiller, who recently moved to an assisted living community in Bellevue close to us. Evelyn Cotton shares what she lists as both a joy and a concern. My grandpa, he's turning 90 tomorrow, and I am glad he is still here. Christopher Cotton shares a joy. Glad to be back and healthy after having spent time in Rhode Island at the beach with masks. Was so good to see the outside world. Lori Samuels shares a joy. Grateful beyond words for the opportunity to sing at a distance with other choir members yesterday and to learn from Patrick Daly in preparation for Saturday's webinar. Patrick is a wonderful teacher and singer, and I encourage everyone to sign up for the webinar. Info is on the church's website. Let us hold these joys that have been shared with us, as well as those joys, sorrows, and concerns that remain unspoken in our hearts, as we join together in the spirit of prayer with these words by Lynn Cox. Spirit of life and love, ancestor of the stars and the sun, you who embrace the vastness of space and us along with it, be with us today. Hold us in our worry, our exhaustion, our grief. Keep us close as we sit with our truth, whatever that may be. Lead us to rest in the quiet, to find solace and renewal in this time of shifting light and dark. You whose arms open with the spinning galaxies, help us to make room, as you do, for all that is. Open our hearts to our loved ones, our neighbors, the beings with whom we share this planet. Lead us to reach out to others in compassion. Turn us toward one another in mercy, right relationship, and reconciliation. Remind us of all that we have learned from the history of the world and from our own histories. Give us the courage to face our mistakes and to repair them whenever possible. Help us understand our interdependence, our gravitational relatedness with all the other spinning lives around us, and lead us to treat those relationships with care. In this moment, gathered together in this space filled with love and with care, we give thanks for this time to be together. May our senses be open to the beauty of this day, this season, and this world. Blessed be, and amen.
Our reading for today is by St. Catherine of Vienna. It could be said that God's foot is so vast that this entire earth is but a field on his toe, and all the forests of the world came from the same root of just a single hair of his. What then is not sanctuary? Where then can I not kneel and pray at a shrine made holy by his presence? As we sit with these words in a time of quiet meditation, I invite you to think on the sacred within your own life. May it be so.
Please join me in singing our middle hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life by Carolyn McDade.
Spirit of love, come
When I first heard the story that Marguerite was telling us today, I could not resist looking up Shirley and Jenny on YouTube. Watching their reunion made me tear up, seeing how they remembered each other after all those years, seeing the palpable, wild joy they had at being together again. Their trunks reaching out for one another, their eagerness to embrace and renew their friendship after so many years apart, highlighted how sanctuary is not just a place that is safe or holy, but a place that fosters that holiness. By making a place to shelter elephants, they created not just safety, but a place of love, of joy, of abundance. Sanctuary means a holy place, and it is only through the use of such physical holy places as a refuge that it came to have the meaning of shelter. That to provide sanctuary for someone is to provide safety or protection. The use of sacred spaces to provide shelter led to those sacred spaces becoming synonymous with shelter. This means that the spiritual led to the physical, which makes sense. If something or someone is holy to us, do we not wish to physically protect them? We protect whom and what we love, what and whom we find sacred. Our reading today had a broad view of sanctuary, with Catherine of Siena understanding all of the forest as a root of hair on God's foot, all of creation as sanctuary. She gives reverence to all of the natural world around her. And while I'm sure that my theology differs quite a bit from a Catholic saint's, I love this point of view. She asks us, what then is not sanctuary? She shows us that the earth is inherently sacred, that the interconnected web of existence is an all-encompassing sanctuary, which means that any place could be our holy place, where we are able to allow our minds to engage on deep levels, where our spirits are safe. Our own sanctuaries arise from the relationship with whatever we find sacred. And in thinking about this, I thought, well, we should talk about what sacred is if we're going to be throwing around the word sanctuary all morning. And I found that the root of the sacred is to be connected. The forest where we feel lost and the towering trees can be a place that feels sacred because we are connected with nature. A journal or a familiar running route can be sacred as a way we connect with ourselves. A kitchen table can feel sacred because it is where we connect with and feed our families. And our church sanctuary is sanctuary because it is a space where we connect with each other, ourselves, with our own understandings of the holy. Our relationship with the sacred, be that God or community, self or beauty, leads us to provide shelter. So how, then, in this time of isolation, do we find that connection, that sanctuary, when we are apart from even our literal sanctuary, absent from the social gatherings, from work, from activities in public places that feed so many of our souls? When we are so disconnected, how do we find that sanctuary? I have been very fortunate so far in the pandemic. Knock on this bookcase right here, which is not wood, but we hope it still works. I am still employed. I am still healthy. All of my loved ones are healthy. At a time when so many people have lost jobs, when the pandemic is disproportionately killing Black people, and we know that so much of our local outbreak is centered in our immigrant populations, I am more aware of my privilege than ever. And still, despite all of that, even though all of my bedrock needs have been met and then some, it has been a really difficult time, an exhausting time, a time of despair and anxiety and numbness. Sanctuary makes me think of rest and safety and sacred, and yet it has felt like a time when nowhere is safe and everything is exhausting and nothing is sacred. The virus has felt like a boogeyman that I feared as a child, always waiting just around the next corner, just out of sight, waiting to harm me or my loved ones. I've been doing a lot of my chaplain work by phone instead of in person, and I feel distant from both my patients and my coworkers. I miss my friends and family and normalcy. Sanctuary started to feel like it was only ever a construct, a pretty idea and not a real thing, that we were never really safe or connected, that a pandemic or lost job or death of a loved one was always looming. In between the fear, the boredom, the disconnection, the sense of uselessness to fix things, to keep people safe, to enact justice in this time, I began to feel numb. Or maybe I began to numb myself. I watched a lot of Netflix, spent a lot of time on the internet. I feared not just the outside world and all its germs and injustice and grief, but I feared what would happen if I actually let myself feel all those fears, feel the collective grief of our community, sit squarely in the uncertainty and injustice we call life. Now, it won't be surprising that this numbness was not particularly pleasant. It kind of felt like a job, filling up the time in a way that was engaging, but not too engaging. It stifled my creativity. And even though I've had more time than ever to write, I haven't written a thing. I would stay up late, preferring blunt tiredness to the anxiety-ridden insomnia that might come if I tried to sleep. And after a while, I got sick of this numbness, of this tiredness. So I decided it was time to try to fix it. So first I tried journaling, to let out my feelings on paper in hopes that it would open some gate within me. I tried reading. I would read a whole book in a day, thinking that if I felt other people's feelings in a fictional world, it might flip some switch within me. I had long phone conversations and Zoom calls with every person I loved, from my mom to my college roommates to my friends across town. My breakthrough finally came. My sanctuary finally arrived in one of these long phone conversations with a dear friend who had suffered a shared loss with me. This friend and I were college roommates, and when one of our other roommates died 5 years ago, we became even closer in our shared grief and ruptured worldview. She is someone who has provided sanctuary for me so many times, making me feel seen and heard and loved and safe. And in talking with her, we reflected on how our worldviews had been violently ripped away all those years ago when our friend died. How vulnerable we felt with the obvious and yet routinely ignored knowledge that ourselves and everyone we loved were vulnerable all the time. The idea that had given us a sense of sanctuary, that the world made sense and was predictable, was suddenly gone. And though we were not any more exposed than we had always been, we were suddenly aware of how fragile we were. It has felt the same now. Those same facades of sanctuary that let me feel that the world is reliable and safe have been stripped away. The oft refrain that things will be okay was ringing with hollowness that I could no longer ignore. And in finally acknowledging that uncertainty and vulnerability with my friend that day, I was finally able to unnumb. And being with someone with whom I had already shared so much grief, I could lay bare my new grief from all our country has lost and is losing in the pandemic. My beloved friends and I shared enough context, enough values, enough trust that I felt safe to sit and open the scary Pandora's box that is 2020 with her. That I trusted her to help me hold all of that sadness and fear. We create sanctuaries like these for one another all the time. When we love someone and we are present with them without judgment, we create that sacred connection and shelter that allows them to open up. This is one of the most profound forms of sanctuary, even as it is the simplest, so to accept someone as they are. It is so much of what I do in my work, just to accept people's grief, their mixed feelings, There's sadness and relief when a loved one dies, just making a safe space where they do not have to hide or fade those things. I think we can all identify that on-edge feeling we experience when we spend time with someone with whom we cannot let our guard down. How unsafe it feels when we have to hide this or that aspect of ourselves. And this leads into the sanctuary that we can create for ourselves when we are able to accept ourselves as we are. This is not an easy thing to do. This is something that roughly a dozen sermons could be written about instead of just a little bit of one. But to accept ourselves, to accept our feelings, our circumstances, is to make our own mind, our own heart safe. It is to make your body a sanctuary everywhere it goes because you are not fighting within yourself. Being sanctuaries for ourselves and one another, the whole of creation being a sacred space, made me think about how sanctuary must be flexible, living. It highlighted the way that a strict understanding of safety or sacred can lead to a space that is claustrophobic and crushing. So many of us in this faith have come from traditions that we found rigid and confining, that had such narrow understandings of what was safe or sacred that they became no sanctuaries at all. That need for flexibility and openness creates the sacred space that we all sit in our homes today, in the community that we are forming over the internet. It creates this community that values the search for truth. And if sanctuaries are living, if they are flexible, then that means action, evolution. It means that growth is integral to sanctuary. At first glance, this doesn't make sense. When I picture a sanctuary, I picture quiet, I picture rest. And it would be so easy just to think of sanctuary as a place where we are simply ourselves. And a sanctuary, hopefully our shared sanctuary, is a place where we can do that. But that is not enough. I think we need sanctuary not just as a space to be, though that is important, but as a space to do. For all that our community, our sanctuary is a calming place, for all that we come here for love and acceptance, we also come together to do really hard things. Sanctuary is a space that we have made safe to engage with uncomfortable and heartbreaking and scary things. A place we have set aside to deal with death, injustice, uncomfortable truths. We not only have weddings in our sanctuary, we also have memorials. Sanctuaries exist for peace and joy, and also for pain, for struggle. Our community, our shared sanctuary, strives to be a place where we feel secure enough to engage in that struggle, safe enough to do the vulnerable work of change. This church is a space where it is safe to do the difficult work of examining one's theology, of taking it apart and putting it back together in a new way. It's a space where we have to do our own emotional work of mourning and healing and reckoning. And we come together to struggle with the very real injustices of the wider world. Our church is a place where we strive to practice anti-racism, which carries the grief and discomfort of rooting out and acknowledging our own biases and wrongdoing and complicity. We come here so that we have the support to look at those injustices, so that we have the strength and community to figure out how we can engage them, how we can make the wider world and our own church even better. It's not a place where we just accept where we are, but where we strive to get where we are going. And I think that this is how sanctuary came from holy to mean safe, that the holy called us to action to create shelter. If something or someone is a shelter, then that means that they are in some way standing up to something. The buildings that each of us are in this morning are sheltering us from the Tennessee heat, from the germs beyond our walls. My friend protected me from judgment and loneliness while I finally let myself feel all the grief I had been carrying. The move from sacred to safety means that someone or something is making it safe, that someone or something is being sturdy and brave. Sanctuaries are places of shelter and connection, of reverence, and they are places where we can use that safety and that vulnerability, where we can be driven by that reverence to transform, heal, and grow. Whether it is making space for a friend to be vulnerable, finding ways to be honest with yourself, or seeking out the sacred all around you, I hope you're always able to create your own sanctuaries.
I know for many of us, music is a place where we find sanctuary, and our closing song today is Blue Boat Home, one that our choir has been finding sanctuary in since March. The tune is Herfordal by Welsh composer Roland Pritchard, with modern lyrics by Peter Mayer. I hope you will join me in the singing.
Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now. Never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in a beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor nor port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
The words for the chalice extinguishing are at the bottom of your order of service. They were written by Elizabeth Sell Jones. Please join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We will end today with the words of Bill Hamilton Hallway. If I were to wish you peace, it would not be for long. It would be peace to rest, to reflect, to make ready for the coming day, that the full force of your creativity and love might be released and shared. I do wish you peace. This service is over. May our service begin again, renewed.